Imagine a world teetering on the edge of uncertainty, where every headline and every whispered conversation carries the weight of global consequences. In 1948, the world seemed to be holding its breath, caught between the devastation of the past and the unknown dangers of the future. Over the skies of Berlin, American and British planes soared not to deliver destruction, but to bring hope, dropping food and coal to a city isolated and starved by a Soviet blockade. Each flight was a lifeline, a message that the world would not stand by in silence. This was not a traditional war. No armies clashed on open fields, but the stakes were nothing less than the future of freedom and democracy across the globe. The Berlin airlift became a powerful symbol of a new kind of conflict, a war fought not with bullets, but with resolve, resources, and the battle of ideas. The alliance that had once united the world against Nazism quickly unraveled, replaced by suspicion, mistrust, and growing hostility between former friends. Why does this beginning still matter today? Because it reveals how fear, ambition, and misunderstanding can poison relationships, split nations, and create barriers that last for generations. The origins of the Cold War are like a detective story with no clear culprit. Historians still debate who was truly to blame. Was it Soviet expansionism, American ambition, or something deeper in the human struggle for power? Or was it simply the immense power vacuum left by the devastation of World War II, a void that demanded to be filled? These questions force us to look closely at the nature of power, the fragility of peace, and the ease with which hope can turn to fear. We'll journey through the ruins of 1945, where the scars of war were still fresh and the future was uncertain. We'll witness the rise of two superpowers, each determined to shape the world in its own image. And we'll see the pivotal events that transformed wartime allies into bitter rivals, setting the stage for decades of tension. By understanding this era, we can recognize the patterns that lead to global division and the warning signs that history often repeats. The Cold War defined the 20th century, shaping politics, culture, and the very way people saw the world. Its origins remind us of the dangers of miscalculation, the cost of mistrust, and the urgent need for dialogue and understanding in an uncertain world, lessons that still echo today. The year 1945 marked a turning point for Europe, bringing both the joy of victory and the harsh reality of devastation. The Second World War had finally ended, but its scars were everywhere. Across the continent, cities were reduced to rubble, millions of people were left homeless, and the old European powers, Britain and France, were left drained, their influence and resources severely diminished. In this shattered landscape, two nations emerged transformed and ready to shape the New World Order, the United States and the Soviet Union, each with their own vision for the future. The United States, untouched by the destruction at home, stood stronger than ever, its economy booming, its military unmatched, and now it possessed the ultimate weapon, the atomic bomb. Americans believed that democracy and capitalism were the true paths to peace, freedom, and prosperity, and they were determined to promote these ideals around the globe. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, though battered and deeply scarred by war, emerged victorious and in control of Eastern Europe. Seeking security, it established a buffer zone of friendly states along its borders. Guided by Marxist-Leninist ideology, the USSR was determined to protect itself from future threats and to spread communism as a force for global change. The alliance between the US and USSR during the war was always uneasy, held together only by their shared goal of defeating Hitler, but beneath the surface, mistrust simmered. At the Yalta and Potsdam conferences, world leaders tried to mask their deep disagreements about Europe's future, but their conflicting ambitions could not be hidden for long. The United States pushed for free elections and self-determination, while Stalin insisted on a sphere of influence to guarantee Soviet security. These opposing goals and ideologies set the stage for a new kind of conflict, a global struggle for influence, power, and the future of humanity itself. The world was now split between two superpowers, each with irreconcilable visions for how society should be organized and governed. And so, as tensions mounted and suspicions deepened, the Cold War had truly begun, a conflict that would shape the world for decades to come. At the heart of the Cold War was a clash of worldviews. The US championed democracy, liberty, and capitalism, seeing its values as universal. The Soviet Union, rooted in Marxism-Leninism, believed in a classless society and state control. Each side saw the other as a threat to its existence. Americans viewed Soviet communism as totalitarian and expansionist. Soviets saw US calls for free elections and aid as attempts to undermine their security. Every action was interpreted through a lens of suspicion. This mutual distrust fueled a cycle of fear and reaction. The world was split by ideology as much as by borders. The fragile post-war peace unraveled quickly, as the devastation of World War II left Europe in ruins and uncertainty. The continent, once united in victory, soon found itself divided by suspicion and fear. In 1946, Winston Churchill's famous Iron Curtain speech gave a name to the growing divide in Europe, warning the world of a new ideological conflict. His words echoed across the globe, signaling the start of a tense new era. The following year, in 1947, the Truman Doctrine committed the United States to containing communism worldwide, promising support to nations threatened by Soviet influence. This marked a dramatic shift in American foreign policy. The Marshall Plan soon followed, offering billions of dollars to rebuild war-torn Europe. While Western nations embraced the aid, Stalin rejected it for the Eastern Bloc, deepening the divide and fueling mistrust between former allies. In 1948, Stalin blockaded Berlin, cutting off all land access to the city. The West responded with the Berlin airlift, flying in food and supplies around the clock, keeping the city alive for nearly a year despite immense challenges. The airlift became a powerful symbol of Western resolve and unity, demonstrating that the Allies would not abandon Berliners to Soviet control. In 1949, NATO was formed, a military alliance designed to counter Soviet aggression and protect Western democracies, binding nations together in collective defense. That same year, the Soviet Union shocked the world by detonating its first atomic bomb, ending the US monopoly on nuclear weapons and escalating the stakes of the conflict. These dramatic events hardened the lines between East and West, turning Europe into a continent split by ideology, barbed wire, and armed guards. The arms race and the formation of rival military alliances locked both sides into a dangerous confrontation, with each preparing for the possibility of war. The Cold War was no longer just an idea, it had become a global reality, shaping politics, economies, and lives on every continent. The world was now divided, armed, and on edge, as ordinary people braced for the possibility of conflict at any moment. The stage was set for decades of rivalry, tension, and uncertainty, a new era defined by the struggle between East and West. Historians still debate who started the Cold War. Traditionalists blame Soviet expansion and Stalin's actions in Eastern Europe. Revisionists argue the US provoked conflict through economic ambitions and atomic diplomacy. Post-revisionists see a tragic cycle of mutual misunderstanding and security fears. Both superpowers acted out of fear and ideology, each seeing the other as the aggressor. The Cold War's origins are complex. No single side was solely to blame. It was a security dilemma. Each move for safety made the other feel threatened. The result was an escalating spiral of mistrust. The Cold War shaped the lives of millions, not just leaders. Pilots like Gail Halvorson dropped candy to Berlin's children, offering hope amid crisis. Espionage and paranoia flourished. Spies like Klaus Fuchs passed secrets, fueling fear and suspicion. Loyalty oaths and witch hunts gripped America. Trust was a rare commodity. Leaders rarely met face-to-face, relying on filtered reports and assumptions. Misunderstandings grew, and decisions made in distant capitals had life-or-death consequences worldwide. Ordinary people lived with constant anxiety, duck-and-cover drills, fallout shelters, and the ever-present threat of nuclear war. The Cold War's psychological toll was immense. It created a generation shaped by fear and uncertainty. The conflict was impersonal, yet its impact was deeply human. The shadow of annihilation was a daily reality. The Cold War was built on choices shaped by mistrust. Stalin imposed communist regimes in Eastern Europe, seeking security but provoking the West. Truman framed the conflict as a moral struggle, rallying Americans but leaving little room for nuance. The Marshall Plan, seen as aid by the US, was viewed as a threat by the Soviets. Each side misread the other's intentions, fueling a cycle of action and reaction. NATO's formation confirmed Soviet fears, leading to further militarization. Every move for security deepened the other's insecurity. The Cold War was not inevitable. It was constructed step by leaders trapped in their own fears. Miscommunication and suspicion became policy. Each decision narrowed future choices, locking both sides into confrontation. The world was reshaped by a cascade of mistrust. The legacy of these choices endures. The Cold War's divisions still shape our world. The globe split into armed camps, proxy wars erupted, and the arms race consumed resources. Nuclear weapons and military spending soared, creating a legacy of fear and massive arsenals. In the US, anti-communist hysteria stifled dissent. In the USSR, repression justified by fear of the West. The conflict fostered a culture of suspicion and conformity. Its lessons remain urgent. Great conflicts often arise from eroded trust and failed empathy. Ideological certainty and cycles of fear are dangerous traps. Open dialogue is essential, even with adversaries. Recognizing the warning signs of history is crucial for our own divided world. The Cold War's origins remind us. Peace is fragile, and understanding is our best defense.